Okay, I think that you answered my next question because next question was in the case of a return of a deflationary environment, yeah, would you still continue to hold oil, copper, zinc, sugar, and other soft commodities?
It depends on how you define deflation. If the world economy doesn't recover, you're going to have politicians print huge amounts of money. Now, throughout history, when politicians have printed a lot of money, it's led to real assets doing very well or doing less badly than other things. So, if we have deflation, as you I think is what you're referring to, or weak economies, then you're going to have politicians print a lot more money, and that eventually is going to go into something. And throughout history, it has gone into real assets like oil or silver or wheat or gold or whatever.
Right. No, okay. So for the moment, Ben Bernanke, is the big hero. Just to have a look in one of the latest issues of the Time magazine, he was declared Man of the Year for successfully reflate the system after the Lehman crash. Isn't Bernanke just a pilot who wasn't able to see the hurricane he was flying in? I mean, that's not from me. That's exactly how Nassim Taleb called it.
Well, Mr. Bernanke has been wrong about it. He went to Washington, I think, 6 or 7 years ago. Nearly everything he's done in Washington has been wrong, and nearly everything he said. He said there was no housing problem. He said there was no subprime crisis. He said there was no economic problem. I mean, you go back and read what Mr. Bernanke said over the past 6 or 7 years. He's been dead wrong about everything. Man's never been right about anything. Never.
You would abolish the Fed. Is that correct?
Yes, of course I would. I mean, the Federal Reserve is causing us more problems than it's solving. I mean, they're taking on gigantic debts. In the past few years, they've printed huge amounts of money. No, the Fed is making and is going to continue to make our situation much worse.
Right, and we totally agree with you. But what do you think is necessary to establish a sound currency system in the future, and who should control it?
Well, the way you have a sound currency is you let the market, quote, control it, to use your terms. But the best way is to have, let people use whatever they want to as a currency. If you want to use gold or silver or seashells or paper money, whatever you want, use it. And as long as other people will accept it, then fine. But that way you have competing currencies, and the sound ones will survive, and the unsound ones will not survive. If you use seashells and I use silver, most people are probably going to take my silver and not your seashells. And eventually, the sound currency will emerge and it will be silver. But if something starts going wrong with a silver currency, then other people might start using gold or wheat or something else. And so in the end, the market will make sure that the currency stays sound.
Right? So you say the Fed is printing money like crazy. Of course, a lot of people, also here in Germany, they are very afraid that this is causing inflation or even hyperinflation in the near term. I mean, I want to ask you a question because I want to refer to one of my favorite bloggers in the US. Perhaps you know him. I think so. That's Mike Shedlock from Sitka Pacific Capital Management. Another one is the Australian economics professor Steve Keen. They have both laid out a model called Fiat World Mathematical Model, in which they explain that the outstanding debt in the US is so high that even a doubling of the monetary base that we have seen so far by the Fed nearly means nothing. Because if Bernanke wanted to really cause inflation or hyperinflation, he would have to 20-fold or 25-fold the current monetary base for being successful. Do you agree with them?
Well, I think that there is inflation in the world. If not hyperinflation, certainly not yet in most countries. We could have eventually hyperinflation as inflation gets worse and worse and worse. Um, I don't expect hyperinflation anytime soon. I don't happen to know the two people you're talking about or what they say, but I certainly do know that there is inflation. Anybody who shops knows that there's inflation, and inflation is getting worse, not better, partly because we have shortages developing of everything. Well, we have shortages of just about everything developing, and that's continuing to cause higher prices, and then governments print money, and that will make it prices even higher down the road.
Okay, we had the pleasure of speaking to Mark Faber a couple of weeks ago, and we asked him if he could imagine governments to forbid the holdings of gold in the hands of private people again, let's say comparable to the 1930s. Mark answered that this is definitely possible. Yeah, it needn't be the case, but it could be. Whenever the government was wrong in the past and private people were right, the situation became very dangerous. Do you agree?
Well, you could certainly have. I mean, governments can do anything. Anything is possible with governments. And yes, it's possible that they would say that people cannot own gold. I don't think it's very likely in the near future, anytime soon, because in the 30s, governments did that because the gold, the economy and the currency anyway was based on gold. We don't have that situation today, so there's really no reason for them to go and outlaw the ownership of gold. Now, eventually they might, if they start having hyperinflation and some people are getting rich, then they'll blame the problems on the people who are getting rich or people who are succeeding, like they always do. But there's no. In the 30s, they thought there was an economic reason to do that. Now, I find it absurd, and it was wrong, and it was outrageous, but be that as it may, you don't have that economic reason now because gold is not used as money, as there's no currencies are based on gold as they were in the 30s.
Isn't it therefore perhaps even better to convert your cash into silver instead of gold? Isn't silver a better investment?
Well, I don't know. You can ask me in 5 or 10 years. I think gold, I think silver probably is a better investment right now just because it's cheaper on a historic basis. But we will see down the road. As I said, I don't think governments are going to confiscate people's gold. If they do confiscate the gold, they might confiscate the silver too. But I think silver is a better investment because it's cheaper compared to gold, at least on a historic basis. But not because I think governments are going to confiscate gold anytime soon. But if you think governments are going to confiscate gold, obviously you should buy silver or platinum or palladium or something that you think they will not confiscate.
Exactly, because that has never happened in the past, I think, in the case of silver.
If they do confiscate the gold, it would certainly make the silver and everything else that much more valuable.
Okay, let's come to a guy, I mean his name is Ted Butler. Do you know him?
No.
Okay, Ted Butler.
He's a silver. I mean, I know he's a silver guy, but I've never met him.
Exactly. I think he brings a case to court against the COMEX, and the outstanding short positions of the huge money center banks, I think, such as J.P. Morgan and Citigroup and so on, because he says or claims that the outstanding short positions are not covered by the metal itself. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, no short position in commodities is covered by the metal itself. I mean, that's what. If I sell wheat, I mean, I'm just selling wheat futures. So I don't know what the man's talking about. I know he's got in his head that the price of silver has been manipulated for a long time. I mean, I find it a little bit strange because if that were the case, why did the price of silver quadruple and quintuple here in the last few years? But maybe I don't understand the case, or maybe you don't understand the case, but always in the futures markets, if you sell, you don't have the metal. You can get the metal, perhaps. You have to get the metal eventually. But if I sell cotton today, if I sell cotton futures, I probably don't have the cotton. I just think the cotton's going to go down. Nothing unusual about that.
Okay,